Well, hello. This is going to be a talk where we're going to look at the Holy Spirit's refreshing our bodies, the biological redemption, and the creation model. And I'll talk about each one of these things at a time. So we're going to be focusing on the Holy Spirit's efforts. We're going to be looking how part of that refers to our bodies, that is vitalized to do the Lord's work. And then I'm going to comment on the creation model that I've developed in some other papers and some other presentations to think how that ties in with this. So as a part of a larger research effort, and I tried to briefly introduce that with the title page, this paper is going to be looking at the Holy Spirit's work, and the focus is going to be looking at the life of Moses. It examines his encounters with God and how the work of the Holy Spirit orchestrated the desired results. So there's lots of biblical characters that we can be thinking about, and we'll be using as a case study Moses for the majority of what we're going to talk about. Biological redemption is the biological response that invigorates human life to be the best postured to do God's missional calling. And so that is what I'm trying to get at. We know what redemption is. And here I'm saying that the redemption actually extends into our biology to help us to do what the Lord wants us to do. So how does biological redemption fit into God's plan? It enables another part of the plan for creation to align with God's purposes. And we have physical bodies, and so for us to be able to do God's work, we need to be having our bodies able to effectively do what the Lord wants. And so an engineering-based model of the Holy Spirit's activity is developed, and I'll get to that in a handful of charts. So we want to be living in step with the Holy Spirit. That's the main focus. We want to align with the activities and leading of the Holy Spirit. All of that is stuff that we know about. We want to yield to what the Holy Spirit enables, and we want to benefit from the redemptive resources that are provided. We can be a channel, and in that channel, we're cleansed and we're also utilized in doing the Lord's efforts. So what I'm trying to suggest is I'm wanting to go from what to how of the Holy Spirit and how the Holy Spirit works. And so on the left here, I'm showing, for example, how the Holy Spirit restores life, brings information to mind, inspires, and encourages. And so these are definitely preliminary, but it's beginning to give an idea of how we would focus on that. And so for restoring life, it would be something on the order of heals damaged cells via defined creation framework methods. So it's not only what, but now we're seeing getting into the specifics of how. And so this can be something, can be leading future research and some interdisciplinary efforts to be thinking about it. Bringing information to mind, we can be thinking of how the Holy Spirit's through the Holy Spirit's intervention, it activates brain memories so that we can recall at just the right moment what is going to be mindful for us to be an effective apologist for a certain type of scenario. The Holy Spirit inspires, and so I could argue it. The Holy Spirit fires up brain emotion center for inspiration. So that might be how that would be working. And finally encourages, and it stimulates an adaptive and lingering response. And a layer or two below that could be thought of like an epigenetic. And an epigenetic is a way of how our gene expression and various things, anywhere from our brain to other parts of our body, actually switches as a result of environmental, and I would argue spiritual types of influences. All right, I'm going to spend a little bit of time walking through the life of Moses, and I'm going to focus on three main epics, roughly 40 years each. And so first we have the first 40 years as the prince of Egypt, and under the edict to kill all male infants, Moses was born, and dramatic risks were required even to allow the possibility of his survival. The little Levite baby Moses was saved by the working of events that included the Holy Spirit's intervention. The daughter of Pharaoh was enamored by the crying baby floating down the Nile in a wicker basket and adopted him. The fact that the Pharaoh's daughter saw him on the Nile is noteworthy, along with Moses' sister working for Pharaoh's daughter. Thus, Moses lived, he wasn't killed, since his sister worked in Pharaoh's court and could suggest a caretaker who actually ended up being the baby's mother. Moses' mother ended up being the caretaker. In terms of the Holy Spirit's intervention, events can be orchestrated in a manner that unfold to do the Lord's will optimally. Thus, the Holy Spirit has access to the physical world in several ways. The particular water flow of the Nile on the day was arranged to ensure the wicker basket launch point and final destination point would work so Pharaoh's daughter could find that. The tar coating on the wicker basket was held, preserving the infant on his boat ride. The weather was such that the baby crying would be clearly heard. The destination point was far enough away that the mother would not have been discovered with her risky plan to save her newborn son. The fact that Moses was assigned his birth mother as a caretaker meant that Moses would have a lasting bond with his mother and get a chance to become aware of both the Israeli life as well as the life of an Egyptian. And all those things are what we see that are captured in Moses's life. Moses, with his Egyptian education, he would be literate and well equipped when he wrote the original Pentateuch scrolls. And so we see that there's some things that are going to be laid away for parts of his future ministry. The transition from this season of life is when we see that Moses came to try and protect a fellow Israelite and was discovered and end up having to run away. And once again, because of his educational background, he knew how and where to effectively go to find a safe place. And so that's what we're going to get to into the next slide here. So since Moses wrote Exodus, some of the material was autobiographical. And so what I'm pulling out here is from that autobiography that he's sharing about. And what I'm trying to do is set this up for some of the engineering type of modeling I'm going to do. And so trying to lead a little bit here and hopefully not stretch the text too far to make a few points in terms of what is actually going on and what can be leveraged in terms of the life of Moses. So the first 40 years, it's really education. We're seeing the Holy Spirit mostly working in the background, and we then get into the second phase where we see things that are similar. So this is where Moses becomes a family man in a foreign country. So Moses fled, and so he had a good idea of where to go, and so going to the land of Midian, and things lined up quite wonderfully that he waters the animals for what ends up being his future father-in-law, which is just a wonderful thing that unfolds there that I won't go into too much details here. So he was dressed as an Egyptian, sitting by the well, and the daughters thank this man for helping them out, but when they go home, his father-in-law was saying, where is this person that did this wonderful thing? So he ends up marrying one of the daughters. He raises a family, and this is where we see him in his second phase of life, his second epic. And it was only when he saw the burning bush that he would then be moving into the third epic of his life. So once again, we see a rather passive way that the Holy Spirit is working. We see some of the divine encounters of him going to Midian, doing a wonderful act of kindness and seeing how that worked itself out for his family unfolding from that. And another part of the autobiography of Moses is laid out in a very effective way here. Next, we get into Moses leading Israel. And there are a lot of things that were part of Moses's character that helped him to be a humble man and helped him prepare for this type of ministry. And in a couple of slides, I'm going to be focusing on 17 different types of areas of his life that I would like to focus on in terms of what I could be pulling out to be thinking about examples of the working of the Holy Spirit and characteristics that God had given for Moses in what he had. And so Moses was a stutterer, for example. His face glowed after having an encounter with God. He got a chance to meet the God that revealed himself as I am who am. And so the very specific ways that Moses was getting to know the Lord in a very important way. So I'll go ahead and move on and thinking about some of the modeling and things that we can be considering as we go from thinking of the life of Moses to think of how that works into the working of the Holy Spirit. I'm just going to be showing this, and this is for context, that I'm going to be leveraging the creation model in some of the things that I'm going to be talking about here, but I won't be focusing on this chart. And so we have the creation of the physical world, the creation of the biological world, and it was only after all of this that man was created, and man is created with some special features, including his ability to engage with the Holy Spirit. And that's going to be one of the key things that I'm going to be focusing on as I go through the material in this talk. So this is a relatively straightforward chart, but even so, there's a lot of information that is trying to be captured in just a few words. So what I have is 17 different areas in which the Holy Spirit was directly involved in the life and ministry of Moses, anywhere from the burning bush. And so take off your sandals. This is a holy place. We see that. We see then Moses being empowered to be doing the ministry of God and instigating the plagues for the whole Israelite nation and Pharaoh. He had to be dealing with the fact that he was a stutterer. One of the ways that kept him as a humble person. He was able, with the empowering of the Lord and the Holy Spirit, to be able to part the Red Sea. What about the idea of eating manna? And that was something, some of these things are not unique to Moses, but he was definitely a partaker of that manna. Being instigated into the role of the chief justice for all of the nation of Israel, we see that laid out in some interesting ways. He has a variety of God encounters. And so that is something that's quite amazing, that is important for us to be thinking about. He was able to do miracles, the having water coming from the rock, and twice we see that played out. He was a person that received the 10 commandments. He was able to go 40 days and 40 nights with no food and no water. So that is definitely quite miraculous for that to happen. As a result of one of these God encounters, it's worth to make it a whole separate thing, as he had a radiant face that endured. And so there was some biological change in his facial skin that resulted in that change. We see Aaron's staff buds. He was involved in that whole process, and so that was something that the Holy Spirit was engaging in the biological world to cause a staff to bud and fully blossom and produce almonds in a short amount of time. We have Moses' speeches. We have how that he was able to speak before the nations of Israel, even though he had issues with being a stutterer. We see the within the Pentateuch, we see songs of Moses, and so he was able to reflect on the glory and majesty of God, which makes us think of some of the things that David did in the Psalms, as well as other folks that wrote some of the Psalms that we have in the Bible. He blesses the 12 tribes. And so as he's moving towards the end of the Pentateuch, he takes the time to be thinking about passing on what he wants to be leaving to the nation of Israel. In general, just writing all of the Pentateuch. And that was a very amazing and comprehensive job that he did. He did that, and finally he sustained his health. All of this 120 years, he was in a healthy place where he was always able to do his ministry effectively. So those are the 17 things that are there. And what I'm doing here is trying to think of, like, I'm going to be using this for what I will be talking about in the next chart of thinking of a model for how the Holy Spirit works with individuals. And so where is the entry point? There can be physical, biological, spiritual, emotional, and mental. So 5 different entry points. What is the type of impact and how it would endure? So it could be maybe a memorable type of event, being involved actively in missional activity, or giving some type of direction, like some of the intense times that he was spending in the presence of the Lord. Finally, there's recovery and sustainment. There can be either healing, empowering, and sustaining. These are things that I was trying to capture in this chart, and then start to populate the details here of what I had seen with the analysis that I've looked at so far. So this is now using an engineering type of diagram. It's called a use case diagram, where we're seeing the Holy Spirit is engaging with an individual. And so these are the things that would be taking place, the things that I laid out here in this table that I tried to be illustrating here at a intentionally high level way of looking at this. And so there's 3 activities, there's 3 things that are going on in this scenario, this use case scenario. There's the engaging, there's the results that are meant to try and happen as a result of this, and then trying to provide active support for these individuals. So there's these 3 main things that I'm trying to lay out in this chart, and then start to put it out into a use case scenario here. So there's plenty more work to be thinking about, how we could be thinking about the specific how the Holy Spirit takes place, but getting it started at a high level is an important thing for us to be thinking about. So trying to put this all together, we have the way that mankind is made at the very end of this creation week. And so it has a benefit of all of the physical world and the biological world that he is able to leverage. And then we also have the working of the Holy Spirit, which I was showing in this last chart, and I tried to and aggregate this together. There's inputs, things from creation that the Holy Spirit causes to enter into the experience of what we have as human beings, and then trying to produce the various types of outcomes. And there are all kinds of mechanisms that are used to try and do that. And so for this brief overview, I'm just going to be leaving it at that level for people to be pondering and thinking about. So one of the publications that I have is I developed what biological redemption would mean. And so God's redemption and our missional calling intersect. And so we know that for a fact, we are created to fulfill our missional calling. Redemption and the work of the Holy Spirit are connected. The Holy Spirit knows how to impact our biology to produce divinely desired outcomes in the best manner and best time possible. Our biology is part of our mission as an enabler. So we need to be using our bodies to do what the Lord would want. And so it's not the main event, but it's something that is important in the scheme of things. That so the human body has to be sustained. And finally, there's this biological redemption taxonomy that I've thought about. And so we know that the Lord can intervene miraculously, but there's also the things that are contained within our biology that the Holy Spirit can directly engage within the engineering features that are encoded into our biology. And so that's what I'm trying to have thought about here. So just to finish up with this brief overview, God uses the lives of individuals, and he used the life of Moses, and we can see that very clearly. The Holy Spirit supports their missional activities. And what I was trying to do is, after doing an exegetical analysis of the life of Moses for this paper, for this presentation, I started to look at architectural modeling and how it can help map from the what of the Holy Spirit to the how the Holy Spirit works. Finally, biological redemption is introduced, and the Spirit uses our bodies to do our work. And so we can be thinking of the nature of God's redemption. We thought about that. We then see how we then go into the redemption of the work of the Holy Spirit. And ultimately what this means is we really do have biology with a mission. And so we have to be thinking in terms of its context, but as a result, we can be doing some interesting biological exploration by trying to be tying together things we know about theology as well as things we know about biology. All right, thank you very much.